not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California. Member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. Welcome to it, folks. We are at the tail end of March as I record this. It's been a year since the whole virus thing hit and things went crazy. I'm sure we all remember the heady days of those first few weeks, which is why I want to dedicate the first chunk of the show to a public service announcement, which is toilet paper could face a new shortage. It, quote, might take weeks to free ship stuck in the Suez Canal. Now, that has been, the news I got today is that the ship has dislodged. There's still problems in the canal, but apparently a lot of our toilet paper comes through the canal. Didn't realize that. I got to think it doesn't, though, right? Well, I guess we could define doesn't. West Coast people, like myself, I would imagine would remain relatively untouched. Right? I mean, I don't know where is toilet paper made? Where is toilet paper made? Where is toilet paper made? Really compelling audio here. U.S. company that produces Charmin has plant locations in 31 cities in the U.S., including Phoenix. So maybe that's not a big deal for us. So I don't know. But for some reason, this article seems to think that that's going to be a big deal. But that seems like it might be an East Coast-y thing, right? I mean, if toilet paper is coming from somewhere else, like it's usually going to be coming from Asia, right? Isn't it going to be? Wouldn't that be it? Anyway. So maybe stock up just to be sure. I'd hate to see folks with a uncleansed backside. Maybe that's just one more reason to get yourself a bidet. But to be honest, let's all be honest, you still need a little toilet paper even if you have a bidet. So there you go. We are 3 minutes in. There's your public service announcement. Maybe stock up on an extra couple of weeks of toilet paper. I'll be honest. So a year ago when this happened, I did a test. And I think I even did a show about the fact that I did this test. And I bought a bunch of toilet paper. But I couldn't get the good stuff. And I think we all know what the good stuff is, right? The Charmin. It's the Charmin. I got some of the Amazon brand toilet paper, and you could only order it in like these humongo boxes. So at the time, I had a number of clients who were like in panic mode. They had either just moved in or were just about to move or whatever. So I bought a bunch of toilet paper, and being the guy I am, I went and I gave toilet paper to my clients. What a great client gift. A nice fresh pack, a nice 12-pack of toilet paper. Anyway, so I still have some of that stuff, which I have, and I'm revealing too much of what a horrible person I am. All that toilet paper has been relegated to the bathrooms I don't use because I don't like it. But anyway, so just a heads up, if you prefer the good stuff, go ahead and buy yourself a few packs of Charmin. And then store it away. I think this is nothing, but I thought it was funny. I don't know why it struck me funny. It's a Monday morning, and I'm in desperate need of entertainment, apparently. In other news, I do have some ground truth we could share. So, and I'm as you all know, I'm a little bit superstitious about that stuff. I don't like to get into things that aren't done yet. But man, I tell you, the most recent transaction that I've been putting together, we have one of the major milestones today, right? So, and everything looks good. We're going to be able to move forward. But, it's time for an honest conversation about setting expectations for buyers and sellers in this crazy market. But it's also about being educated in how you approach the markets you're interested in and really understanding the dynamics involved. I have seen now the full spectrum, right? I talked about this in the last show a little bit, where we were putting in offers and homes that are now closing, right? So about a month ago, this process started with a specific client. And these are clients who have a good taste and are just naturally drawn to good homes and that adhere to all the rules, right? Particularly location. And the competition on the homes that are at the top of those kinds of lists are going like gangbusters. They are selling super fast with dozens of offers, multiple dozens of offers. And that is a bad thing for buyers, right? It means that you have to do crazy things. And you get people on Reddit who are celebrating the fact that they overpaid for a house by $500,000 to get it. That's just freaking nuts. But so here's the thing. How do you calibrate to that as a buyer, where you realize if you don't come in with no contingencies, a huge deposit, and I mean no contingencies, nothing, not your loan, not anything. So that, in other words, you make the offer, and if for any reason you back out, you lose some chunk of your deposit, right? In California, the limit is 3%. You can't lose more than 3% of your of the purchase price, assuming that your deposit reaches 3%. So everybody needs to put in at least 3% for their deposit because you need to have the full Monty at risk. But I mean, these are things that won, and we're not even talking all cash, right? So that used to be the thing, right? The first time around, it was all cash. Everybody's got to be all cash. And while I'm sure sellers love all cash, the number of people coming out in all cash seems to be down. And what we're seeing is folks coming out with absolutely no contingencies. If the seller needs a rent back, they get a free rent back for whatever, for X amount of months, basically giving the seller everything, which is tiresome. Particularly if you're working with buyers and you're trying to get them into a reasonable home. So that's what's happening if you're buying in some of the most desirable neighborhoods in San Jose, for instance, whether we're talking about Japantown, Willow, Glen, particularly the Palms area of Willow, Glen. These are super desirable areas. And if you haven't had a chance to drive those areas, you know what? Follow me on Instagram, because I'm not an annoying Instagram guy. I don't Instagram super frequently, but I am going to go, and this is an area where when I first got into real estate in the late 80s, early 90s, these were areas where I cut my teeth in a lot of ways, right? I was based up in Los Altos, in Mountain View, Los Altos area, but I loved those neighborhoods because of the architecture. And in driving around showing homes, there were some just amazing homes. And not, I'm not a huge house guy. I'm not a 4,000, 8,000, 10,000 square foot house guy. I mean, who wants to be able to play polo in your living room? It's not for me. Particularly if you're just alone like I am, just alone. But there was, God, man, the architecture was amazing. And we looked at this one house that was a Spanish style. And in my head, I should have taken photos and posted them to Instagram. But, I'm going to start doing that. And I'm also going to take a trip this weekend. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a trip this weekend because Los Gatos used to be my go-to. Los Gatos has got amazing architecture. You can go down some of the main drags in Los Gatos, and you can go home after home, and you can see a Craftsman, a Victorian, an Edwardian, just all kinds of a fusion, right, of several different styles. You can have Art Deco. You can have, it's awesome, the variety. And this was a neighborhood in Willow, Glen, where I was seeing just some classic, like some colonial style and some just amazing architecture. And I love that. I hate big boxes pooped out of the sky that just land there and it's a house, right? My house is kind of like that. I love the fact that my house has all these windows on the front, which I just got replaced. They just finished yesterday. Thank you very much. That was a huge pile of money. But anyway, I dig it. I love the architecture. And I kind of, it's a bummer when you see homes that show no interest in having a unique architectural appeal. And I tell you, this one Spanish house we looked at was such a standout for me. Now, we ended up making an offer on a different house. We didn't make an offer on that house. However, if I had been the buyer in that scenario, and it's already in escrow, so it did sell quickly, so whoever got that house, good on you. it did have problems, right? It had a back part of the house that just made no damn sense, that screamed out, remodel me. It was really jacked up on the bathroom side of things, and the shower was one of those. For those of you who, I don't know if this is a countrywide thing, I'm imagining it probably is, but some of these older homes that are like turn of the century, last century, the showers are like a tomb, a vertical tomb. There's no light inside. It's impossible for you to shower without bumping your elbows, right? Even if you're a petite flower of a person. And man, I hate, and the idea of, because whenever I'm templating a house on me or my clients, I'm thinking, what is your day-to-day life going to be? What are things you do every day in this house that with this particular house will annoy the crap out of you until you fix it? And it was that bathroom, man. There was no master bath per se in this house. It was a much older house, Spanish style, but man, the rest of that house was just amazing. It was a house where you would love to just hang out in almost any room. Just spectacular. It really pushed all my buttons, right? It had the history, it had the architecture, but it also provided if you wanted to go in and buy that home for $1.3 million and then spend an additional $200,000 to $300,000 remodeling, you could address all that stuff. And $200,000 to $300,000 is a cheap estimate, right? It's probably more 4+. But anyway, I totally would have bought that house. It was awesome. It touched all my warm, fuzzy buttons. And I get that there's not logic there. There's not stats. There's not, numbers to churn. And I'm much more of a numbers guy. But every once in a while, a house comes along and it pushes my emotional buttons. And I'm like, If I could have put something together in terms of getting my home, but I would have had to been contingent on selling this place, I would have put an offer in if it was even vaguely feasible. Anyway, sorry. Boy, did I go off into the weeds on that one. But they were happy weeds because I got to talk about awesome stuff. So the point here is the location part of your search is absolutely going to pay into it. And how do I define that in the terms of what we're talking about? One of the homes we looked at early on, you go in there and it was like, who the hell made this layout? Clearly this home was remodeled since it was built. And it was a home that was probably built in 1917, 1920, right in that ballpark. Great sized lot, but just had a whole bunch, and you couldn't just tackle one thing, right? So the kitchen absolutely needed a remodel, but you didn't want to spend money remodeling the kitchen without actually changing the footprint of the kitchen because the footprint sucked. And plus, there was like a weird little dining room that was literally a room with a door. There was a door at one end and a little door at the other end, and the rest of the house was at one door, and the kitchen was at the other door. And that was just absolutely not a modern concept. It was absolutely horrible. And I can't imagine it ever was an enjoyable layout, even when it was first built. But the bottom line is there were 3 walls you probably wanted to take down. The point I'm getting at, it wouldn't have just been a kitchen remodel. It would need to be a complete teardown of the kitchen end of the house, which would have taken out the kitchen, the dining room, and the living room, and would have made that a more wide open space, which was fine and good and should happen. But that means that you can't do it in little chunks. That's a huge chunk, and that's a whole lot of money, and that's what needed to happen. And that doesn't even take into account the rest of the house that had its own issues, right? So we consider making an offer on this house. And a reason why I leaned into this as a topic for today was because of the attitude. And I've talked about this before. I talked about it a lot back in 2008, 9, 10. Right after the recovery. So 2013, 14. Sellers, agents, when they feel like they're in the driver's seat, they just want to screw it to you, right? So this agent, I'd had several conversations with her, and she was pretty aware. And I looked at her sales history, and she was one of these folks, maybe to her credit, who really wanted to boost and maybe not. Maybe she's not even thinking this. Maybe she's strictly thinking the more money that gets made, the more commission I make. And the more my client makes, right? I don't want to assume any bad motivations on her part. But the point was, I said, we were ready to make an offer on that place because we felt like we could get it at a better price, and the better price we could get would make a remodel far more reasonable for us, right? So my folks were willing to go way beyond. This thing was priced about 1.2, right at 1.2. I think it was 1199, which kind of made sense given the market. right? This was a home that needed at least $200,000 to $300,000 of work, and we figured once that work was done, it would be worth more than $1.5 million, right? So doing the math in our head. So I reach out to her and I say, hey, how about one? And we were willing to come in at over asking, right? I said, how about 126, which would be, about 60 grand over asking. And her response was, there needs to be a 3 in it. Okay, how about 123? Or how about 1263? So, and my folks, and that was kind of our limit, right? We weren't being coy. We offered what we thought it was worth based on the work that needed to happen to the home. And not just stuff my clients needed, just me as a guy, as a real estate guy, looking at a home and thinking, what will this home sell for? The vast majority of people who walk through that house are going to go, why the hell is that way? And the kitchen was absolutely top of the list. It had one of those like Formica weird countertops, the wood core that's got like a plastic covering over it with the rounded edges that someone had painted with faux marble paint, which did not solve the problem, right? So just a thing for all of you out there in the world that are thinking about prepping your home for sale, please, God, do not paint your kitchen countertops to try to improve their appearance. Just don't. Just don't do it. It's not going to make it better. It's going to make it worse. But in any event, we were like, yeah, well, 1.3, that's too high. That's not going to happen. So in the conversation I had with my buyers, it just didn't make sense, right? And there was good math on that one. Interesting note. So 3 days later, and this my folks were still looking into it. They had taken extensive measurements while we were in the house, so they were thinking about what would we need to do to make this work, and what needed to come down, what needed to go up, and then ballparking remodeling costs. And so, a few days later, the listing agent, hey, are your folks still interested? Well, they're kind of doing their math. They're contemplating where things would go and what would need to change. And she reached back out a couple of times, and clearly the story was changing in terms of her assumption that this needed to be at 1.3 or higher. As of today, this property is still for sale. Now, keep in mind, I've been at this now for almost a month with these buyers, and we have looked at, I don't know, I think if you added it all up, probably 20 to 30 homes, which is totally A-okay with me. I realize a lot of agents bitch about showing homes. I love showing homes for the reason I was enthusiastic before, because there's just awesome houses out there, and there's awesome history to discover, and there's, I get a kick out of getting into a home and discovering that cool little closet they used to put phones in, right? That little pull-down thing in walls that no one knows. What the hell is that for, right? Well, it used to be for a phone. Or the stuff that used to be for ironing boards to come down, right? That have been repurposed somewhere else in the house. Just there's so many cool little architectural things that I dig. I'm sorry. I'm a geek. I admit it. I love that stuff. But anyway, so now my folks are in escrow, and that house is still on the market, and I'm willing to bet it is not going to sell with a 3 in it. At least not if that 3 is the second number. It may go for 123 at this point. It wouldn't. In fact, I should look it up. I should look it up and see what's up with it. Should I do it right now while we're sitting here talking and just see if she's reduced the price? Because I'm willing to bet she's going to have to. But it's a perfect example. This was not in one of those exceptional areas. Now, it is in a good area. It's in a desirable overall city, but it's not like the Palms in Willow, Glen, right? It is, I hate to even say where it is because we saw so many homes, I'm not even 100% sure. But my point here is, even though the market is insane, if you can focus on areas of lower competition, and lower competition can be found 2 different ways. It can be found by the location element involved, but it can also be found by the deficiencies of the property that can be changed, right? There's nothing you can do about buying a home in an area where the crime rate is ridiculous, right? Just as an example, I'm just throwing that out there. There's nothing you can do about things you can't directly change. But if you find a home where you can affect those things and you can figure out the values, like for instance, on this particular home, if they had bought it and then decided to just do a minimal amount of stuff, we did the math, and I was thinking, you know what? Assuming this market stays crazy for at least the next 8 months, you could buy this home, do this, spend 40 grand, and I bet you could sell it for over 100 grand over what you paid for it. So there's definitely room for good stuff for buyers. Don't be afraid of the market. Just be afraid of being dumb in the market, or not dumb, on the part of the buyer being poorly informed, on the part of the agent being dumb. And that is where the key is. You want a thinker on your side. And I'm not going to claim I'm a thinker. I'm just going to say that's who you want. And whether or not someone is really thinking about what's going on in a market is going to be evident by what they say and show you relating to the market that you're interested in. So choose wisely. Just be super careful. If this is just sort of and here's the other part. I don't know if everyone needs to love seeing homes as much as I do in order for them to be a good agent. I think that adds a thing, right? I'm totally willing. I'm willing to tell you everything I believe about a house when we walk in the door. I'm willing to say, this room sucks, and here's why. Or, what the hell were they thinking with this layout? You'd want to take out this wall and that wall. And then as I get to know my clients, my comments become tailored to what they have demonstrated to me that they want. Good example. My buyers are a husband and wife, and I know what the wife wants out of the kitchen. She has talked to me a lot about her history, where she grew up, how her mom and dad think about things, and how she thinks about things, and how they use their home. And she's a person who wants a kitchen that's going to facilitate that lifestyle. Well, we come to a house that's beautifully remodeled, amazing, but the kitchen is way at the back. It doesn't border any of the core social spaces unless you make the kitchen the social space, which was possible there because of its size. But the room where the TV is going to be, or the living room, the congregating room, is way up at the front. And there's like 2 rooms between you and there. So that didn't feel like a flow for her, right? Other rooms where the kitchen was way too small and would need to be remodeled, like this home we're talking about before, where the agent thought a 3 needed to be in there. There was no way that kitchen was going to do it for her. It was like a room. It had a small, normal-sized door at each end. One went to the dining room, one went to the family room. So if you're doing stuff in the kitchen, because she loves to cook, you're isolated. You're all by yourself. People are going to have to yell for you to hear what they're saying. Not what she wants, right? So you provide input that helps them put the space into context. So a good example, right? So the Spanish-style home that we looked at, which, again, I loved. I would buy it. If I could have, I would have bought it. And then I would have immediately remodeled that bathroom. I said, hold on. I said, come here. Because they were getting excited about it, too. I was feeding their excitement because I loved the architecture. That's my bad. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. But they loved it, too. They have kind of a thing for the history of a home and classic architecture. I said, all right, please get inside that shower and close the shower door. And then act like you're taking a shower. They immediately understood why that shower was a problem. It's got no light. You close that shower door. And if you're in the shower and someone comes in to use that bathroom, which is a super high probability because it's the only bathroom on that end of the house, the bathroom door to go into the bathroom then covers entirely the shower. So now you are in almost complete darkness. There's only like 4 inches of light that'll come in from the top of the glass door to the shower. And I'm like, so are you comfortable in there? Is that something you'd like to do every day for 15 minutes? Yeah. So not going to happen, right? I mean, we have to meld that in with the realities of the situation. But I'll tell you what, from my perspective, I would have bought that house, and if it was necessary, I would have taken a shower with a hose in the backyard, which really would have been bad news for the neighbors. But that's how much I loved that house. It was so unique. You don't get that with houses frequently, sadly. Wow, I went on a tirade. We were 25 minutes in, and I feel like I've just been on fire for that entire time. All right, so we talked about the toilet paper to lead in. The whole point of this show was supposed to be talking about housing inventory. Now we're getting to it 24 minutes in. And just to translate everything I've said, let's bring it to a head. I like to give you the takeaway. Why should a buyer, seller, or an investor care about what we just talked about? Well, if you're a buyer and you're making offers and you're getting your butt kicked to the tune of being beaten by hundreds of thousands of dollars and dozens of other offers, well, take a step back. Figure out what means the most to you. If you really love these areas and here's the other upside, right? These areas are what they are, and they're going to stay that way. So even if you pay some crazy premium to be there, these properties, these areas are still going to be the last ones to see a decline, the first ones to see a recovery, and the ones most likely to hold their value across time, right? So you get benefits. It's not like you pay that money and it's worth nothing. So you get some of this classic, amazing turn-of-the-century architecture. You get an amazing neighborhood, and you get super desirable locations. So there is that. If that's worth it to you, and it's worth it for you to cough up an extra $500,000, totally not worth it for me, by the way, then more power to you, right? But if not, if you're okay with a typical neighborhood, more of a standard suburban neighborhood, or even a downtown neighborhood that is just a little bit more densely put together, right? Willow Glen tends to be, at least feel like there's more space. I think it's because of all the trees and green, but the lots are just wider, right? So, but if you're willing to go with like a San Jose, right? Where you've got some nice classic architecture there all lined up, that's where you're going to find you're going to be able to make a deal. And other areas too, right? Not just San Jose. I say that just because that's where I've been with my clients over the last couple of weeks. So understand that it can happen. And for those folks who are looking for a deal, this house I was just talking about is absolutely going to be in there. Let me, you know what? Just before we wrap this up, is it still active? Ooh, wow, there's now 2 on that street that are active. Okay, so they have not, oh, wait. They have reduced the list price by $100,000 on this house. Holy free holies. I'm going to have to call my buyers and just tell them about this. See, that's awesome. This is a house where, and this is a perfect example, right? And this is the benefit of tracking homes that you're interested in. This seller is ready to take the first offer they get. They've just dropped the price. They maybe have gotten really crappy low end. Now, this does happen to be officially in Willow Glen. So you're getting a Willow Glen home at a list price of under $1.1 million. Pretty awesome, right? So, I mean, that's a great one. And, this is now priced at a point where it totally makes sense to buy it, drop another $400K on the deficiencies of the property, and then resell it. You could make money doing it on this house. Absolutely. No question in my mind. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, over 1,500 square feet, over a 6,000 square foot lot. Absolutely. Well, maybe I have some math to do. Maybe I should figure this out. But anyway, so that's the reality. You've got the full, and this is not the most desirable area of Willow Glen, right? But it's Willow Glen. Everybody freaking loves Willow Glen. Willow Glen is like a destination for a lot of folks where they want to be. And you'd get the benefits of a more robust market at a price that's pretty reasonable. All right. So inventory numbers. This is from Calculated Risk. Housing inventory March 29th update at record lows. As of March 26, inventory was at 313,000. That's a 7-day average compared to 747,000 the same week a year ago. That's a decline of 58%. So, and if you're a seller, the seller is list your house, right? And if you're someone who benefits from these amazing locations, this may be the time to take your money out, right? But here's the other thing, and to address like this particular home that has the deficiencies, grok that, right? Find an agent who will be honest with you. You are suffering from an obsolescence of design. And that is why that house has not sold. 100%. People are walking in there and without any context are not thinking, well, because of my extensive knowledge on rehabilitation and remodeling, I would say that this will cost approximately $250,000 to fix. Nope, that's not the way your average buyer works. They walk in, they see a crap ton of stuff that would need to change, and they're like, I'm out. No thanks. They don't do the math, right? So there you go. Anyway, so back to the thing I was talking about. That's a decline of 58%. A week ago, inventory was 316,000. It was down 57% year over year. So, and here's the thing I want you guys to think about, and I've brought this up before. Nobody wants to say, yeah, Robert, you got a point. The fact and this is going to sound a little crazy given what I just told you in terms of like how much above asking some truly desirable homes are. But let's look at this other home that now has dropped its price by $100,000. If I were to tell you that the inventory of available homes was down 57%, and we haven't seen a commensurate drop in buyers, what price should things be going for? Now, maybe what this tells us is that the majority of those buyers, the number of buyers that are out there, which hasn't dropped much over the last year, is more focused on this higher end, right? In terms of they want the best that they can find, that they can get. And that sweet spot seems to be in this 1.2, 1.3 to 1.78 range. But that's a range with a difference, meaning I'm going to find a house that's listed at 1.2 and I'm going to offer 1.8, which is nuts, right? But I think that's what a lot of folks are calibrated to in those particularly competitive marketplaces. So it's very stressful. And be willing to go in there and test the waters. I mean, my buyers, they fell in love with the first house they saw. They fell in love with a house in Willow, Glen, in the Palms, super desirable area. 23, I think I went over the rundown on this one. 23 offers, $400,000 over asking price, no contingencies, rent back to the seller for 2 months for free. That was the deal that won. Just nuts. But now my folks are in, and they're in for a couple of $100,000 less than they went on this other property. So literally, they've got money to take and do cool stuff to this house that they're going to own in less than a month. So that's good news, right? That's awesome for them. But the takeaway overall from all the data we've talked about: buyers, do not lose heart. Get a good partner in this, in the form of a real estate person who's going to be honest with you, who's going to be willing to jump through the hoops with you in terms of like making as many offers as you need to get done, but then also making sure that you're calibrated to the areas of the market that are so desirable that these crazy amounts are being offered on them. And if you're not willing to pay the premium, don't play the game. Just go to the areas that are a little bit less well known. Maybe no one's written a book about it. Maybe there's no tour guide about that neighborhood. Maybe you don't need that, right? I know I couldn't care less about that. I mean, granted, the appearance of neighborhoods appeals to me, right? And there was this, and the one I'd love to go take photos of and share with you via Instagram. That's another Willow Glen neighborhood, but freaking awesome, right? So I get drawn to that, and then I discover, oh, well, this happens to be like one of those neighborhoods, right? And what's funny is we're at 33 minutes. I apologize. What's funny is way back. So got my license in real estate in October of 1987 or October of 88. I can't remember which. I think it was 88. But anyway, so one of the very first transactions ever was in one of these neighborhoods over there. This was in an area like in the Willow Glen. It was in Willow Glen. And I remember it not even being that great, right? It wasn't even that great of a neighborhood. It was actually kind of a heavily dominated rental part of town. And so, but Willow Glen some parts of Willow Glen have always been ridiculously desirable. So this must have been sort of like one of the least desirable areas of Willow Glen. But the one street we went down, I recognized because one of the houses had been there in the 80s. And I recognized it not because I had sold a house on that street. I had sold one nearby a decade later. But at the time that I was looking at that house, when I was in high school, I was dating a girl whose parents owned the house, and so I would go for visits, and the house was still there. And I remembered in my head, I've always kind of had a little bit of an interest in real estate. I usually don't blindly go through neighborhoods without paying attention to homes, and even when I was in high school. And I looked at this house, and I'm like, holy crap, that's Sherry's house. And went up and down the street a few times and said, man, this neighborhood's been completely redone. But here's the cool thing. And I'll finish with this. I apologize. We're longer than 30 minutes. I try to keep these things to 20. I'm totally unreliable on this. I remember thinking back then how cool the homes were. But, most of these homes look like the neighboring homes. Look like they scraped off whatever home was there and rebuilt a new one. But here's what's awesome. They didn't skimp on the architectural uniqueness that had been there before. And that's what I love to see. I love to see, and this is a neighborhood of people, so all different people. So you're going to get all kinds of people who want to save as much money as they can. Then you're going to get people who are more affluent, who are like, you know what, I want to build an amazing home, and I'm going to concern myself less with the monetary cost involved. And it was clear that for house after house, there were people who were willing to invest the time and the effort to create architecturally stunning homes. And I don't know. It reminded me entirely of one of the primary reasons why I love this business is that kind of stuff. So anyway, I sometimes I think everybody would love for me to share that with everybody, but it might be like a bug guy sharing his love for bugs with everybody. Yeah, as long as they're not in my food, I'm fine. But anyway, so that's it for today, folks. I wanted to jump on. It's been so long since last we chatted. I've been crazy busy and just sort of now getting a little bit of a room to breathe. I limit the number of buyers I'll take on at any one time. So I'm creeping up on being able to let one person in the door in terms of being on the buyer side. So I'm able to slack down a little bit for that. But in any event, the goal here is always to share with you far more information than I take up in your time. I hope that's true at 36 minutes into the show. Hopefully we achieve that goal today. I really appreciate you spending your valuable time with me. Thanks again. Don't forget to check in with me at my website, www.soldbyrobert.com. Check in with me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Just search for Rebel Broker anywhere along there or Robert Whitelaw, or just go to soldbyrobert.com, and there's links to all of those social media sites, so feel free to check it out. Thanks again, everybody. I'll talk to y'all next time.